Coming up on today's episode, I'm going to show you the backyard transformation from start up until now. Not only that, but I am going to show you an update from April 2024. Welcome back to A Wild Approach. In this video, you're going to see how we went from this dilapidated, poorly structured porch to a wildlife garden. And it all started with this porch that was falling apart, and we had a structural engineer come out and talk to us about it. And unfortunately, the porch wasn't fully built properly, at least not built the way that it would have been built nowadays. And so it wasn't really safe. We started to worry that it was going to collapse under us, so for a while we just stopped walking across it and put caution tape on it. But back when we were using it, it was nice to have, not gonna lie. But it was always kind of odd. It was two different materials. Half of it was concrete and half of it was wood. And as you can see right here, this is where you can see it bowing and warping, and water was just rushing right to our mud plate or steel plate. I get those mixed up, but it was causing damage to that and the siding. So we had to get it out of here. And so we hired a company to come and deconstruct the porch. And they used like a robot to help them demolish this old porch. And it was pretty interesting to watch them. I have some security camera footage of it, and then I have some footage of it out through the window. And it was just really interesting to see. And in the footage, you can kind of see the T-posts that were used to help build this porch apparently back in, I'm assuming, the 70s, because our house was built in the 70s. And that is what the structural engineer told us was unsafe. These pretty much fence posts were used to help hold up the porch, and that wasn't the proper way to do things. Here's what it looks like after they demolished the porch. They accidentally hit this electrical line on the bottom left of the screen, but they did fix that. It was intense, and they had to take away the debris, and what we were left with was, things that we had to repair when it comes to, just general things that were wrong with the foundation to begin with. And then we also had to have a different company come and fix the siding and the sill plate, the mud plate. And this is what we had in this stage. It was just bare ground. I actually needed to fix the driveway, so I did. I did a little patch job on the driveway because it got cracked in the process, which is totally understandable. I mean, demo is no walk in the park, people. And as you can see, there was a lot to clean up. And we really needed to regrade the soil. The dirt was it was a flood-prone area to start with, and with just the way that the grading over time had gotten really degraded, we had to bring in some soil. So we brought in some dirt, and my husband and I both wheeled soil over to it and regraded this area, and that was hard work. Let me tell you, if you can, hire that out. I do not recommend doing this yourself, but if you are like us and you're super frugal and you're determined to do what you can by yourself, you can try it. I'm going to let you know. It was a physical toll on my body, It was an emotional toll, but that's probably because I was also going through grief at the time. So I was doing this while I was grieving the loss of my mom, and while we were all in the pandemic. And so this was a very stressful time. And I am one of those people that I'm not great at asking for help from like outside. I can ask for help from my husband all day long, but I'm not great at asking for help from friends and family for stuff like this. I don't know why, but I'm just not. So it was pretty much my husband and I doing this part with the dirt. And before we did that, we had to seal some holes in the concrete. And it was just so much backbreaking work. I don't even remember how long it took. It felt like it was going to take forever to get that dirt gone. And by gone, I mean built up behind our home to create the correct grade so that rain wasn't just rushing toward our house at the speed of light. And another problem is bare ground is not great either, no plantings. It creates this environment for flooding and erosion. And so you not only need to build up the dirt, but you also eventually need to, as quickly as you can really, plant things. And one of the men that came to work on the property said, "Oh, you really need to plant some grass." And I was like, well, I do need to plant things, but I don't want grass. And part of the reason is that I really, as you know, if you watch this channel, am all about reducing the lawn. But it's also, this area is one of the few areas that's great on the property when it comes to shade and like ferns. It's a great spot for ferns and shade-loving things. And so I was like, no, I've got to use this as an opportunity to plant those shade-loving plants. I have a lot of sun through most of my yard. And I figured I knew grass wouldn't grow great back here. It would be patchy, it would be muddy, it would be a pain in the butt. And I knew it would probably be better to just choose things that would add variety and diversity to our native garden. We started a native garden in the front yard. Why not make the backyard have even more garden space? And in case you're wondering, I have a long-term goal for this. I wanted a porch rebuilt back here initially. I really, really wanted that. But when we got quotes for that, we realized it was way outside of our budget, and we do not like debt, so we didn't want to go into a bunch of debt just for one house project, just for a porch. Yeah, a porch is awesome. A porch would be really, really nice to have, and we were looking at doing a covered porch, so it'd be really, really nice to have that shade, but when it comes down to it, it just wasn't worth it for how insanely expensive it would be. So we also looked at doing a deck, and it was expensive as well. We looked at doing like a small deck, like a small set of wooden steps, and the price was just so expensive, not just because of it's expensive in general to do anything like that, but it's also with COVID and everything, it made the prices go up really, really high. And so this was during that stage where the price of wood was insane. So I had the idea of why not get mobile home steps. And no, they're not glamorous by any means, but we just at the time really needed ways to get out of our back doors. Both of our back doors were just, you couldn't walk out, safely, So we just needed steps really, really fast. So we got these mobile home steps, and it cost a few $100s versus a few $1,000s. And the other reason for this is we knew we needed a new roof. And so we already spent thousands of dollars to demo the porch that wasn't safe to walk on anymore. And then we were going to have to spend thousands of dollars on a new roof. And we were just like, a porch isn't really, it's not a need, it's a want at this point. Steps, they're a need. A porch, a fancy porch, that's a want. And so we made the decision to turn this into a garden and have just some steps out the back doors. And we realized that, depending on how long we want to live in this house, eventually we can save up for a porch. We can eventually get a porch if we decide to, or we can eventually get a small deck or a patio back here. We can maybe just have stone steps built back here. We have so many options, and I kind of don't really know what I want, by the end of it. So we don't really know what we want for the final look back here, so we figure this is the best interim stage since we already had other house projects we had to prioritize. A roof is like the most important thing, so we couldn't really skip the roof, and the demoing of the porch was just a safety protocol. So those were more important than building a brand new covered porch. And so even if without a roof, the porch would have been expensive, and we would have had to been careful about how it was built and what materials were used. We would need to make sure that the same issue wasn't going to happen again, because that was the whole problem, is it was creating this moisture issue on the wall. And so, we had to spend to get the seal and mud plate fixed. We had to spend to get the siding fixed. We had to spend to get the steps brought in, and we had to spend money to get the new roof and the porch demoed, all of that. So the rest of this was kind of becoming very DIY. So back here you're seeing us put the ladder up there because, we wanted to make it look nice back here. So we ended up cleaning the siding, we cleaned the gutters, we cleaned, we tried to keep the steps clean. More on that later. It didn't go great. We might have to buy a pressure washer or rent one because these steps have gotten extremely dirty since this video. You'll see later in the video, maybe, our steps are very dirty now. But we'll talk about that later. But for right now, you're seeing footage of us working on pathways because that was the next important step. And again, we were like, can we DIY this? If we mess this up, it's not as big of a deal as messing up, we can't do our own roof, we can't demo our own porch, but we could probably put in our own pathways. And fun fact, it worked. I think we did a dang good job. Now, the only critique I have, and the only tip I have for you if you want to do this, is if you build a path like this with these bricks and these stepping stones, and you use this, you use, what is that sand? There's this sand, I think it's called polymeric sand, that you put in between the bricks, and so it makes this solid, so like the in between the bricks is solid too. The only problem with this is that when we get a crazy amount of rain, it floods a little bit between the path and the first step. So that corner that you see in the footage right now, that kind of floods when we get a lot of rain. And so if I were to do this over again, I would learn how to do a little drain hole, or I would have, I don't know, I would have ramped it, I would have sloped it somehow instead of making it really flat. We made it as level as we could. So, it's pretty level. It might slope slightly toward the steps, and that might be the problem. So I would say either slope it away from your steps. Basically, you want to go downhill or, away from your house, basically, and away from the steps. So that water will go toward your driveway. Well, in our case, it's our driveway. Toward the driveway rather than toward the steps. But other than that, I love how it turned out. It turned out fantastic. And so basically what I do because of the water is sometimes I just have to create a little outlet for the water to go. So I just kind of dig a little trench, like a tiny little trench in the dirt on the left and right of the step. And that way the water can go to the garden beds because I have a garden bed on each side of it now, and those plants could use the water more than our pathway. And so what you're seeing here is we put down landscape fabric. I only use landscape fabric in very certain situations because I actually hate it. I actually hate landscape fabric. but I will use it sometimes. And this is one of those times I used it, and it was to put it down underneath the paver base. That sandy looking stuff you see, that gray sandy looking stuff, is actually paver base. And it's great to use that underneath your bricks and your stepping stones. So that's what we did. So we dug a rectangle in the soil, the native soil, and that rectangle is the basic shape of our path. And inside that rectangle, we put landscape fabric first, then the paver base. And when we put the paver base in, that is the most time-consuming step, because the paver base, you want to make it as level as possible. So we worked to make the paver base completely level as possible, moving wood across it to flatten it and make it super level. And compacting it, it's good to compact it as well. That makes it more likely to stay level for longer. And then after that, you put in your bricks, and you place your bricks and stepping stones the way you want them to be placed and the design you want to create. And we just went with a very simple design where the stepping stones are in the middle and the bricks are on the outside, because I would love to actually have a more interesting design, but I just needed to get this done ASAP, and I didn't have a way to cut these stones. So rather than come up with like a diagonal, like a really cool like diamond pattern or something, which I would love, we decided to just do it easy and simple, because this was our first time ever doing a path like this. And we just wanted to make sure that we were going to do it right and we were going to get it done correctly. And so not having to cut any of these made the process so much easier. And it made us as beginners really feel confident when we got this done, because I love how this turned out. And is it perfect? No. I mentioned the drainage issue, but everything else, I love it. Everything else about it. It gives us a path to get from our driveway to our steps. And I'm so glad we did it. I don't regret it at all. The only other tip I have is the polymeric sand. Don't put the polymeric sand on the outside edge. You don't need to do that. Just let the bricks be the outside edge. See how we actually have the polymeric sand on the outside edge on the left and right? That didn't really stay. It kind of just sloughs off. And so that's something to note. Just let the polymeric sand exist between concrete and your concrete and your pavers and your bricks, between things. Don't let it hang out just right next to your dirt, because it'll just slough off. It's meant for being in between these hardscape surfaces. So anyway, you just saw a winter time, you saw a snow, and now 2 years ago now, you're seeing April 2022, and my husband is moving one of my black cherry trees that I have in a pot back to the patio. And now you're seeing the awning. We added the awning. I don't have footage of us putting it up because it was actually a lot more of a pain in the butt than we expected it to be, but it's so worth it. It keeps the rain off our heads when we go in the door, and it protects our siding a little bit. It's not perfect, but we're just trying to protect our home as much as we can, as well as we don't really want to get rained on when we're on our way in the house anyway. And this is just us cleaning up the tarp and just hanging out on the patio and trying to enjoy the nice April weather. We were so happy to finally be done putting dirt out there. Like, it was so much work. And then next is, for whatever reason, footage of me working on this dry creek is is actually the most popular video on my channel. I don't know why, but it is like the most popular when it comes to views on my entire channel, and I find that super interesting. But I am going to talk about it in this video. I don't think you have to have landscape fabric for a project like this, but I'll tell you why I did it. So I already had created a trench in my side garden, which is a different area. I created a trench in my side garden, and I did not use landscape fabric in that. And what I found was that the pebbles, the little gravels, just kind of sunk into the dirt. And what that did was it allowed a lot of weeds to grow, and it wasn't the most fun weeds ever, but some things were good. Some things were native. But I kind of got frustrated that the pebbles kind of disappear over time. And so with this one, my experiment was, let me use landscape fabric and let me see, if it retains a little bit better of the look that we start with, I want to see if we can retain that look of all those little gravels and all the stones and all of that. And what I did was I dug this creek. It's a dry creek. It's for drainage. I dug this, and then after that, I put the landscape fabric directly in that, and then inside that, to hold the landscape fabric, I'm putting these river rocks that my friend gave me. I'm putting these river rocks to hold it in place, and then after that, you're gonna see. I'm going to be putting gravel in here, and it's like I forget what it's called, but it's like a Tennessee gravel. I don't even know if it's called, is it pea gravel? I can't remember, but it's a small Tennessee gravel, and it's kind of a brown, it's got like browns and tans, it's really pretty. And then mixed with that, I'm going to put the sand, and I think this is just play sand. I want to reiterate that I'm not in any way a professional. I am doing all this very DIY, homeowner DIY, process. And so everything that I do is based on things I have looked up online, read in books, learned from other videos on YouTube, multiple sources. But here's the thing. There's so many ways to create a dry creek, and there are so many ways to create solutions for drainage in your garden. And so you can create rain gardens, you can create dry creeks, you can create ditches, trenches, you can do so many things. And so I have several things I'm utilizing. I have a French drain on this property. I have a trench in my side garden, and then I have this dry creek back here, and then I put those little platforms underneath my gutters to make the water, go just a little bit further past the gutter. Things like this. And we try to keep our gutters clean as well, which I actually need to clean them again. I just cleaned them a few months ago, but I need to clean them again because the pine needles are building up. But anyway, there are so many ways to tackle drainage on your property. And I want you to know that there are a lot of ways to tackle it on your own. You don't have to. It depends on the project. Sometimes you have to shell out a bunch of money if you have a really bad drainage and flooding problem. But if you have just a small issue, you might be able to DIY it. It might just take a heck of a lot of elbow grease and a lot of exhausting days. And I mean exhausting days. It is exhausting to dig a trench from all the way from your backyard to your front yard. It's exhausting to dig a dry creek. It's exhausting to lay a bunch of rocks and gravels and sand. It's tiring, but to me it's worth it because we've spent a lot of money on this house. We've had a lot of things we've had to fix. Not to complain. We've been lucky that we've been able to fix them as they happen rather than feeling like we're trying to rush around and fix it. But it's like you have to pick and choose your battles. You have to pick and choose what you spend your money on and what you do yourself. And sometimes you can know off the bat what you can do yourself, and sometimes you don't. And this is a great example. So this project is me trying to improve the look of the foundation. And earlier in this video, you probably saw me trying to remove the stucco. There is this stucco material on this wall, and I tried to remove it multiple times. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, well, since some of this seems very solid and very stuck on here to where I can't get it off, I can't scrape it off, what if I just paint over it? And so I bought some Drylock, I think is what it's called, and I painted I think I painted 2 coats of this on here, but don't quote me on that. And it looked so good when I first painted it. As you can see in this footage, it looked so good. And I wanted something, I didn't want white because of how dirty this area is, and I knew it was going to get dirty. So I wanted to paint it this tan color. I actually wanted a darker color, but they didn't have anything darker from the Drylock, the base Drylock colors. So I just went with this one. And you can see the dirt up on the steps right there. See, it just gets so dirty because, again, we don't have those plants. We need to add the plants to help with the drainage, or not the drainage issue, but help with the erosion issue. But you'll see later that Drylock paint did not do what I was hoping it would do, and it's because of the stucco. The stucco eventually came, like, I don't understand why it was so hard for me to get it off. And then months after painting it, all of a sudden it decides it's going to gradually start chipping and coming off. And I'm like, seriously? And so it was a huge mess. And I don't have any footage of me cleaning up the mess, but I did just recently, a week or 2 ago, clean up the mess. I had to pick up all the paint chips and the stucco pieces off the ground. It was all over my plants. Oh, it was awful. So sometimes things seem DIY-able. Like painting your foundation, you would think, oh, that's easy. Not necessarily. It depends on the situation. And clearly, my foundation, certain areas of it have stucco, and those areas are just not DIY-able. I'm just going to have to figure out something else for that. Or maybe it is DIY-able, and maybe I just need to do a different project. Or maybe I just need to learn how to better remove stucco. I don't know. But, you know, it comes with the territory. When you are working on your house, you might find some things that you can do yourself, and you're also going to find some things you can't. Like plumbing, most plumbing things, I've got to hire out. I mean, I can do some small things, but 9 times out of 10, I got to hire it out. But in this footage here, you're going to see I'm putting in plants finally. I'm putting in my ferns I wanted. I'm putting in wild ginger. I'm putting in strawberries. And I'm putting in, what else? Phlox and woodland stonecrop and dwarf crested irises. I'm putting in all kinds of like shade tolerant or shade loving plants close to the house and then under the eaves and things like that. We've got to get this erosion situation under control. And this area flooded before we got the plants in. And then, of course, it still flooded when we got the plants in because they were babies. So the quicker you get plants and mulch in there, the better the soil is going to be protected and the less erosion you're going to have. So also think about the mulch that you use. We used a mix of leaves that we got for free and some, I think, pine bark wood, not wood chips. I forget what they're called. It's like shredded pine bark mulch. I don't know. I forget what it's called. It was in the footage. But we basically used a mix of free leaves and that. Because mulch is expensive. And another thing you can do is you can get a load of wood chips sent to your house. But we had someone we know have an issue with that. Like they tried to do like chip drop and it took forever. Like it was like months before they even got it. And I was like, no, I need this now though. Like I need this now. Unfortunately, when you have a really bad erosion and flooding issue behind your house, like right next to your steps, you want that fixed ASAP versus just an aesthetic garden bed somewhere else on your property, you know, where it's not really is super not time consuming, but you're not on a huge time crunch. This was a time crunch, and so we needed mulch pretty quick. So we did buy some bags, and then, again, the rest of it was leaves. Pine needles are great, too. We get pine needles from our gutters, you know, because there's pine trees next door. So we get plenty of pine needles that drop from the gutters, but, you know, it only goes so far, and it only lasts so long. So until the plants grow, you kind of need to have some mulch around them if you have this bad of an erosion issue. And you can see we had these black plastic kind of little ditch things that we were using to direct the water. And I don't really like those black plastic water things. I don't think they're great. I think that we should have just left the ground open and just put more plants back there or something. Because I just don't think it was necessary. Because it keeps things from growing right there. So it just kind of keeps the problem there, and then the water is directed to certain areas, and then it washes out those certain areas, and it doesn't wash out other areas, and so it's kind of unevenly washed out. And so I don't recommend the black plastic drainage ditches, really, but I do recommend those little pieces you saw that were brown, that were near my gutters. Those are great. It's like a little splash pad thing for your gutters. I like those. That directs the water, but it directs the water in a very specific direction away from your house. Like you can decide how it's flowing. And something about the black ditches, they just go one way. Like you can't really direct them. It's just weird how they work. And so I just don't recommend those, but I'm sure there's a good use for them somewhere. And this is, I think, milkweed vine or honey vine or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what it is. And if so, monarch butterflies might actually enjoy it. And it just came up. So there's stuff in this soil. The soil we had brought in meant we were also bringing in whatever seeds are in the soil. So keep that in mind when you bring soil in. We had a bunch of these sedges. I'm still not sure if these sedges are native or not. This particular sedge spreads like crazy, so I've been pulling them up from the area right up against the house because that's where I want the ferns and the violets and the wild geraniums and the foam flowers to grow, and I want them to flourish, so I don't want them to get out competed by the sedge. And I might also have to remove some asters and goldenrods from up against the house because those are going to outcompete all the woodlandy stuff too. Maybe. And so I probably have to remove those too. But I'm keeping the goldenrods and asters on the other side of the path. There's a wood path between. And basically I've kind of decided that like the side of the path toward the house, by the way, that's a mantid fly. And I found that back here. It was so cool. I was like, what is this? It looks like a lacewing, but it also looks like a mantis. I had never seen one before. But anyway, so I think on the side of the wood path closest to the house is going to be like stuff like this, like the wild ginger and the wild geranium and the ferns, like Christmas fern and lady fern and all of those. And then I think on the other side of the wood path, I'm going to let things like the asters and the goldenrod go like crazy. This is an orchid, I think, and it looks like when it flowers, it looks like a lady's tresses. I'm not sure what kind of lady's tresses it is. There's a lot of lookalikes, but... And then this is Christmas fern. This was a year ago in March of 2023. The new fronds look very, like, bright green, and then the older fronds kind of turn like a darker green. And we get some asters back here, but we also have blue mist flower. I think I planted the blue mist flower here. And it's strange. Like in catalogs, blue mist flower says it's really good for the shade. But in my experience, blue mist flower does better in the sun. I don't know why. I will say though that blue mist flower does better in the sun in my garden until we get a horrible drought. So if we get 2 months straight of drought, then mistflower starts to really, really suffer. And I'm wondering if it's going to come back because we had that this past summer. We had 2 months straight of just drought. And so we're going to see if any of the mistflower comes back because it can kind of come back kind of late. Not as late as passion vine, but still it feels late, because when we see these things coming up in March and April, we're like, well, where's the other stuff? Where's the passion vine? Where's the mistflower? Okay, here you can see the foundation. This is that paint and the stucco. The paint just kind of lifted and chipped, and then it for some reason it made the stucco some of the stucco you could actually start to peel off. So I found that super interesting. It's almost like there was already moisture in there, and the paint kind of made the moisture like stay in there, and then that moisture made the stucco pop off and the paint pop off. I don't know if that's true. I'm not sure because, we've done so much work back here to fix the drainage issues, and we had to have a spigot put on, like a new spigot, because it was leaking, so there was water from that in the wall. We've fixed these things, so we have a dehumidifier down there. So, I don't know if there's still moisture getting in there somehow. I don't know. But I will say that paint does not want to stay. So we will have to figure out what we're going to do for the wall. Maybe we leave it. Maybe we just wash it. I just want it to look decent. I don't care if it's perfect. I just want it to look decent. So now you're seeing the March 2023 plants back here. You're seeing the goldenrod and aster stems. You're seeing some Queen Anne's lace stems. The Queen Anne's lace is not native, and it's pretty aggressive. So I would say be careful with Queen Anne's lace. I have pulled a bunch of them up, but I still have a bunch left. So I have kind of a love for Queen Anne's lace, even though I probably shouldn't. It's probably one of those plants we should technically be removing. But I have this maybe unreasonable love for it, and so I find myself wanting to keep some of it, but man, it's aggressive. So I'm going to have to dig a bunch of it up because it's like, I have too many right now. And I don't want it to overtake all of my cute little spring plants back here and my ferns. So I have to be vigilant with that. Right now, it's in a spot where it's competing with the asters and goldenrods. So, the asters and goldenrods are not going to not let anything get them down. They're going to keep growing. But the phlox, this is woodland phlox, and that is dwarf crested iris. The woodland phlox, I just have so much trouble with. I haven't seen it bloom once. And as you saw, I put it in, and what was that, 2022, maybe? I haven't seen it bloom at all. I'm watching for it this year, but I have a feeling it's just in a bad spot. So I might have to move the woodland phlox to a different area, and if I do, I might move it kind of toward where, the wild ginger and the ferns are, because supposedly it likes that kind of environment anyways. Maybe the area it's in right now is too dry. I'm not quite sure, but the dwarf crested iris does great over there. So maybe they're just close enough to the dry creek that they get that water every now and then from rainfall. I don't know. They're also kind of closer to the gutter. So maybe the irises are fine because of where they're at. The phlox is more up on the berm a little bit, right next to the steps, and probably doesn't get any sun at all. Because if you look at this spot, which it's right here on the bottom right, next to that bottom step, that's where the phlox is. And I think it's just a situation where it gets sun, but just certain time of the day it'll get some sun. I don't know. But I thought they loved shade, so I'm confused on that. If you have any insight on how to make woodland phlox happy, let me know, because I love it. It's one of my favorites for woodland gardens. It really is. The butterflies love it, and I see them in the wild just getting completely covered in butterflies, and I want that for myself here. So now you're seeing that we put a railing on. I don't know where the footage is of us actually putting the railing on, but I do have footage of that somewhere. So I'm not putting it in this video since I don't know where it's at. But we did put one railing on, and we plan to put the other railing on. Now, if you're wondering about the other set of steps, don't worry, because the other set of steps is for our master bathroom door, and we almost never walk out the master bathroom door. To me, it's such an awkward back door. Like, I almost never go out that. I think I'm usually going out that door to clean the siding right there, or to clean the cobwebs off of the doorway. Anyway, this is a spice bush right near the gutter. The other spice bush, I think, gets too much sun. This one that you're seeing right now, it gets a lot of shade. And it just seems happier. And it's right next to the gutters. And I think it's happier with that moisture. This is nighttime footage from June 18th, 2023. A family of raccoons running up our driveway and coming to the back garden. And here you can see this back garden we've been talking about this whole time. You can see the wooden path in the middle of the screen, our car in the distance, and then the set of steps that's, from our point of view, is that bathroom. And they're running up the retaining wall. They're jumping on the steps and running up the retaining wall back there behind the umbrella, and they're just so cute. I love raccoons. They love to climb the silver maple behind our house. It belongs to our neighbor behind us. They love climbing up that silver maple, and it's just adorable. I love the wildlife that come through. This is June 2023. We're getting so much closer to present day. Look at this. Erigeron explodes in June. Erigeron just goes ham. I love this plant because it's prolific, it's beautiful, it makes me think of like a classic prairie, I don't know, a classic meadow feel. And as you can see, when all of the spring things are done, the Erigeron just takes over in June. The Erigeron just takes over, and it's gorgeous. It's very prolific. It reseeds itself a lot. I'm not seeing as much of it now in April 2024 just yet, but it may just be too early. But it's prolific. So if you like this flower, I suggest letting it do its thing. It came up as a volunteer. I didn't plant it. I did not plant it. Came up on its own, and I just think it's gorgeous. I love how it looks up against the railing of the steps. I think it just looks so cottagey, and I can't speak enough about it. I love it so much. And you could see we added some little lights to the awning, but we only use those once in the blue moon because it's best to actually keep your yard as dark as possible. So you're best off using motion lights. Actually, the best thing for the wildlife is not have any lights on the outside of your house at all, or at least to never have them on. But the next best thing is like motion lights and those darker lights, like the reds and the yellows, like the really dim lights. The worst lights are the bright white lights that you just leave on. So the strategy that we use is we have motion lights, and unfortunately the bulbs are way too bright. We should definitely switch the bulbs, but they're motion lights, so they only come on in the case of like movement back here, someone moving back here. Now, the raccoons, as you saw, the raccoons run up here and the lights come on, which is unfortunate, because it does, it's not great for them, but it does make it to where we get to see them, so we get to see them on the camera. But the lights go off pretty quick after the movement stops, so as soon as they run to their little corner and they feel safe, the light will go off. As you can see in this footage, to the left was the back door steps, and then to the right was the wooden path. And you could see the stepping stone and brick path, right? I love how it turned out. I love how it turned out so much. It's nice to have a path to both sets of steps, and it's really nice to have this railing on this set of steps. Before we had the railing, it was such a pain in the butt. And so hopefully we'll add the other railings soon. But it's been fine for now, and I don't really have any complaints other than, like I said before, a little bit of flooding on the path. It happens every once in a while. The wood path, flooding doesn't really happen because the wood path has the empty spaces between, and that's a good thing to remember. If you can create a permeable path, that's the best for the environment, is some kind of permeable path. I just wanted an impenetrable path, for our main back door, just because we just have so much foot traffic through there. I mean, that's the door we use when we come home. It's every single day. So we wanted that path to be really, really sturdy, stable, and easy to utilize. And so the wooden path is for the path less traveled. That one, we just don't really use it super often. It's just for like maintenance. I use that path really just to pull weeds in the garden and to clean the gutters, things like that. We had a little baby rabbit. Look at it. It's so cute. And it was right next to the pokeweed. And we also had yellow jackets back here in the back garden, but not in the main area where you're seeing all the plants. This is an undeveloped area, kind of near the corner of the French drain area. And we didn't get stung at all. My husband, he still mowed feet away from them. He just didn't mow directly where their nest was. So, like, we left that garden bed. It's kind of an undeveloped garden bed, so it's kind of just violets and some weeds and some erigeron, and then the spice bush is there, a dead rhododendron, and a hydrangea. So it doesn't really have a ground cover layer yet, except for the violets. So we just left it alone. He didn't weed eat it or mow it all season long. Because the yellow jackets were there, and it was fine. It hasn't really, it's in such a shady area that it hasn't really caused an issue. And they didn't sting him, even though he was mowing just feet away from their nest. So yeah, sometimes you can live in harmony with yellow jackets, believe it or not. I was taking a lot of precautions. I was not going through that way. Like, when I would go to that part of the garden, I would go the other way. I would go around, like, the alleyway. I call it the alleyway, but it's not an alleyway. I just took different routes. But honestly, I probably could have just walked right through there, because if my husband can mow through there, I probably could have just walked through there and been fine. So, sometimes you can live in harmony with them. Just try it and see. I mean, unless you're allergic. If you're allergic, I can understand having them removed or something. But if you're not, and I don't think I am, I might need to knock on wood, but I don't think I am. And my husband's not. So he's been stung before, and he's not allergic. So however, I don't think I've ever been stung by them. I've been chased in the past when I made a stupid decision when I first encountered a yellow jacket. I didn't even know that there was a yellow jacket there. It's a long story, but I did get chased once. But that was my own fault for basically destroying their nest, because I didn't know that they were there. But I was just trying to fill some holes in my garden when I was first started gardening, and apparently that was bad. But anyway, so just be careful around holes, little holes that look like chipmunk holes or mouse holes. Just be mindful that a yellow jacket could have moved into that. But here you're seeing footage of October 2023, and I loved this. Seeing the birds on the goldenrod was just, it was wonderful. It was so wonderful. But they were pecking and having a blast, and I just loved watching them. And I just think that this is one of the most beautiful combinations you can possibly have in your garden. And it's asters and goldenrods. Asters and goldenrods. And I think my goldenrod is Altissima, I think. Solidago Altissima, but I'm not 100% sure. Which, there's two different Canada goldenrods that people talk about, and I think mine's the Altissima one, but again, it could be wrong. The aster is, I'm not sure, but I think it's hairy oldfield aster, and I don't remember the scientific name off the top of my head, but again, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what it is. And it is just gorgeous, and the butterflies utilize it, and the birds utilize it. When the asters go to seed, the birds eat those seeds. This, I think, are like winter crane flies, but I'm not sure. Because this was back, I don't remember what month this was, but this was the cool weather. This is like winter, you know? And we saw these insects and we were like, wait, but it's winter. What are these insects? And I looked it up and I think they were winter crane flies. And they looked like little fairies. They legit just looked like little fairies flying around the goldenrod seeds and the aster seeds. And it was just so cool. And it was so pretty in the sunlight. I just thought it was such a cool sight to see in the middle of winter. But, you know, you let me know what you think in the comments. I don't know. I just thought they were so cool. We caught one in a jar and we looked at it, and that's why I think that they're winter crane flies, is because I like zoomed in on it with the camera and I looked it up, and that's what they kind of looked like. So, yeah, I learned something new. There's a such thing as a winter crane fly. Who knew? And they look like fairies. Even when you zoom in, they look like fairies. Like they have like the fairy wings and the legs, and they just look like they're dancing. It is so cool. No wonder there's a legend about fairies in this world, right? Like, this is why. Like, people see this stuff, and it looks like little fairies flying around. So, anywho, I leave the seed heads up not only for winter interest and beauty, but also for food for the birds. The birds really enjoyed coming to this garden in the winter and eating those seeds. It was snowing. And the birds, they were eating the seeds. This is what the same garden looks like when the snow is fallen. And you can see how pretty it is to leave your stems up and to leave your seed heads up. And how gorgeous it looks to have that snow laying on there. Think about how boring it would be if there were no plants and no seed heads and no stems up. There'd be no dimension. But look at this. Look at this dimension, this garden dimension. It's gorgeous. And then, you know, it started to melt away a little bit in January. And then you can see what it looks like when it's kind of melted away, but it's really, really wet. All the leaves are really wet. You saw how dirty my steps were. I really need to pressure wash it. But the seed heads were still looking good at this time. And I'm telling you, another great reason to leave your stems up is a lot of stems of our native plants are utilized by bees. A lot of times bees live in the stems of these plants. And so it's just really important habitat for the wildlife. There's so many good reasons to leave your stems and your seeds up. And it's such a difficult concept for us as a species, I think, because we're so used to the obsession with cleanliness and the obsession with tidying the garden and the obsession with everything being clipped and neat and tidy. And it's so hard to step away from that, which is funny because, like, I love the messy look. I love a wild garden. I love it to look like the wild things live there. I don't like it to look sterile. And look, here you can see the foundation again. You can see a lot of the paint came off. Look at that. You could see it in the background for a second. And, anyway, we're so obsessed with keeping everything super clipped and tidy and just separated from each other, when in reality, in the wild, things grow very close together and they compete for resources. And you have ground covers, you have vines, you have shrubs, you have herbaceous things, you have trees, you have all these different layers happening. And then, you know, Mother Nature doesn't clip back the stems. She doesn't go through and prune everything to the stub. So, you know, most of the time, it's better to leave your stems and seed heads up. Now, there's some exceptions, but instead, let's talk about now, April 2024. Look at that. Foam flower. I added foam flower a few months ago. I don't know, maybe in the fall. I forget when I planted it. Probably the fall. And I'm so glad I did. Look at this footage. The flowers are phenomenal. They look like starbursts or something, or stars, or like fireworks. They're gorgeous. Fun fact, I added foam flower to my front garden years ago when I first started gardening, and that was back when I didn't read the tags and I didn't care what the tags said, and I put plants wherever I wanted, so I would always put the wrong plant in the wrong place. And I put foam flower in a full sun, hot garden up against the foundation of my house, and it was the worst decision because that foam flower died real fast. But back here, it is in a place it's supposed to be, and it's thriving. The foam flower looks gorgeous. And I love it. I love it so much. And the great thing about it is the leaves are pretty much evergreen. Like, the leaves were there all winter long. They just they didn't look as bright green in the winter, so they kind of blended in with the ground a little bit, but they were still there. So they're pretty much evergreen. And I love mixing it with the wild geranium and the wild ginger and the ferns, and I think it looks so good with all these things. Okay, now over here you can see the paths, and you can see how dirty the steps got if you like paused the screen just then. So I'm wondering if pressure washing would fix that issue, but I'm not really sure. So here you can see some strawberry plants, some violet plants, and wild ginger. I think the wild ginger is super pretty, and look at these cool flowers. They're awesome. How can you not think that's awesome? So the wild ginger is great for a ground cover layer, and it does take a while for it to really spread out. This is definitely the best year I've had so far of the wild ginger. And then here you can see the strawberry plants. These are not like the straight species native strawberries, but they're like a cross between the native and a non-native one. And then this is a mystery plant. This plant came up by itself, and I don't know what it is. And it kind of looks like blackberry, but it kind of doesn't. So I don't know if it's a native blackberry or what. When I look it up, it says like dewberry on iNaturalist, but I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's a raspberry. I don't know. But no matter what it is, it has thorns, so I'll probably have to move it. But I'm just waiting to see what it is. This is, I think, a little brown jug. I got little brown jugs, and this is violets. This is violets, and I loved the colors on these specific ones. I get a range between the deep violet, the medium violet, and then the white with the violet center. And I also just really love the ones that look like that perfect in between. This is obedient plant, and then above it is wild geranium, and to the right is wild ginger. The obedient plant is taking a little bit of time to come back, but it's coming back. The wild geranium, I cannot wait for it to bloom. I hope it's going to bloom because I hope it's not in too much shade. I hope it has enough sun to bloom. We'll see. And then that little tiny, like, bright green plant is, I think, ponyfoot. I think it's a native, like a tiny little ground cover native that's, I think, called ponyfoot, but I'm not 100% sure. That's a volunteer. And then you can see the beautiful white flowers of the foam flowers. So back here, the earliest blooms I have are definitely the foam flower and the violets. And then after that is some of like the shorter erigeron species are going to be next. And then after that, probably the irises, and then the other erigeron species. And then way later, the asters and the goldenrods. I think those are the bloom times. And of course, right now, the wild ginger is blooming. And you can see I have 5 different wild ginger plants throughout this garden, and I have 3 Christmas ferns. I have, is that Solomon seal or false Solomon seal to the right? I forget which one that is called. It's either Solomon seal or false Solomon seal. Help me in the comment section. And then I have netted chain ferns and southern lady ferns, I think. And I say I think because my brother's girlfriend's aunt gave me some of those ferns and the wild little brown jugs. And so I'm not sure what kind of ferns they are because she just gave them to me from her garden. But I think they're netted chain fern and southern lady fern. in this footage right here. And I need to remove that goldenrod or aster to the right of that, because that is not a good spot for it. And then I have some creeping Charlie I need to pull up, and then I don't know what that plant is on the left. I don't know if it's native or not. That little plant on the left there. It's like a little ground cover. So I guess I'll remove it if it's invasive, but if it's not, I'll just leave it since it's really, really short, not really creating any kind of issue for any of these yet. And then there's what I think is the southern lady fern. If you know, tell me in the comments. I actually watched a fern webinar a couple months ago, and it was awesome. But I don't know if it was recorded. I don't have the recording, I don't think. And so I can't compare it to the recording. But I can probably just take a snapshot of it. As it grows, it'll be better for that. But when I look them up on iNaturalist, that's what it says. This is what I think is the Solomon seal, and then this is the Christmas fern. The new fronds are really cool looking. They look so hairy. Christmas fern is an evergreen fern, and it still looks pretty good around Christmas time, which is why it's called Christmas fern. But, you know, after Christmas has passed, it starts to kind of look a little bit less pretty. It's still there, it still exists, it's still evergreen, but it just looks less pretty. The netted chain fern and the southern lady fern, I notice, are completely deciduous, and they completely die down to the ground and come back from the ground. So, it's just the more you know. And as you can see, I have a lot of oak leaves and pine needles and stuff here from my neighbor's trees. My neighbor has some beautiful mature pines and oaks, so I get a bunch of those leaves, and I value them. This is that orchid. Something really likes to eat it. I did not plant this plant, it's a volunteer, but I try to protect it because I know it's special. I know it's special, so I try to protect it as best I can, but something keeps trying to eat it. So I don't know, it might be the groundhogs, I'm not sure, but I haven't actually seen the groundhogs at all yet this year. So I don't know what's trying to eat it now. Maybe a squirrel. Maybe squirrels like to eat it, I don't know. But here you go, you can see this little sweep of the garden, and I call this area Fern Gully because this is where the ferns grow the best. This is where the most moisture is and the least sunlight. And so it's just a great area for ferns, at least so far. And then here are those really pretty violets that actually have the white with like the violet center. And I think that's a thistle or something. I don't know, but I need to check on that. This is a phlox. This is the woodland phlox that I have trouble with, that I might have to move. If this doesn't bloom this year, I'm gonna move it because it just doesn't seem happy in this spot. And then I have a lot of this Queen Anne's lace I need to remove. I like Queen Anne's lace, so I'm probably gonna keep one or two, but if you only have one or two, it produces a lot of seeds, so you don't really need any more than that. This is dwarf crested iris. Love dwarf crested iris, and I was worried that it wasn't gonna come back, but then I saw it coming back. This is sassafras. And I'm really, really excited about this one because I just planted this, I guess this last fall. And so it's coming out, it's leafing out, and I'm so excited. I hope it doesn't get that laurel wilt that I've heard about. That laurel wilt is awful. It's been killing a bunch of sassafras and I guess spicebush too. And so hopefully it doesn't develop that. We'll keep an eye on it. This is spiderwort. And I have two different spiderworts in my garden. I have Ohio spiderwort and I have Virginia spiderwort, and I can't remember which one's which. So I don't know if that's the Ohio one or the Virginia one, but this is bee balm, wild bergamot, and something is really eating this one for some reason, which is interesting because I have a lot of bergamot in my garden, especially in the front yard, and I never really see all those little holes. But hey, it's a sign that the wildlife are utilizing it. And then here's another one of those really pretty violets up close. So you can see the gorgeous, delicate veining that's in the center. I think that's so pretty. And I love that these violets are free. They just come up on their own, they're just volunteer. And look, this is the spice bush. This is the spice bush that does the best so far. I have it right up against the back of my house in a very shady area, in a very protected area, and it's right next to the gutter. So it probably gets plenty of moisture and it gets plenty of shade. And then at the bottom, I have a lot of violets that just come up on their own. And I do have some non-native strawberries I need to remove, like with the little yellow flowers. So I do need to remove those, but here you go. Here it is today, April 4th. I did a quick clip of it today because the wild ginger was looking extra full and lush today. And I just wanted you to see it. I do need to clean up some mess, some like containers of plants that didn't really grow. You know, I just need to do a little bit of cleanup back here, but other than that, I'm loving it. And I do have sedges in here that I think are woodland sedge, but don't quote me on that one. I got those for free from a plant swap, so I forget if that's exactly what it's called, woodland sedge or or maybe wood sedge. Maybe, I'm not sure, but. And then I have another plant in here that I forget the name of. That's right there in the middle of the screen right now. And it is a really cool plant, but I'm blanking on the name of it. So if I remember, I will let you know. Like, if it ever blooms, I'll let you know. Because it's supposed to bloom really, really cool blooms that the pollinators love. So we'll see. But yeah, that is the backyard. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. This garden was a long process and it took a lot of work, and I'm so glad that it has been flourishing, and I think I'm excited to see what we add to it next. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys! You all requested it and it's finally here. Reduce Your Lawn shirts are now available in my brand new merch shop. Thanks so much for supporting the wildlife habitat we're creating. To support the channel, like the video, comment, and subscribe. You can also support my work by buying art from me at maceylou.com. Thanks for watching!